We're going to look at the squat exercise. The squat is one of the best exercises you can do when it's done correctly. It builds strength, which leads to speed. It builds power, it builds resilience, and it's a fantastic exercise for injury prevention. The big issue I have with the squat is if it's done incorrectly, it can cause long-term injury problems, and it can cause a lot of problems in the lower back when the athlete gets older. So we're going to look at ways that if your athlete isn't squatting correctly, we're going to do a thing called regressions that will allow the athlete to develop their squat movement pattern, eventually then where they can put the bar on their shoulders and do the squat correctly. So first thing with the squat is how we unrack the bar. We place our feet and hips directly under the bar. We bend the knees. We then place the bar on the fleshy part of the shoulder, just below the neck. And to unrack the bar safely, we just straighten the legs and then lift the bar off the rack. Okay? So when we're squatting, we like the squat to look something like this. The bar's lowered and the weight's sitting directly under the hips and the torso's fairly vertical. The problem that I have is some athletes are taught incorrectly and the bar leans forward and it puts the hips and the lower back in a real compromising position. So we want to tidy that up, and we're going to show you some regressions so your athlete can squat correctly and safely. The first regression in the squat sequence of this online course is called a CM squat. CM standing for counter movement. And what that does is it pushes the athlete back into that really good, safe squatting position. And this can really pattern the athlete who's doing it in a good squatting position for life. So to do this exercise, you need some type of implement, whether it's a plate, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, or a bag of potatoes. It doesn't matter. Remember, feet shoulder width apart. We hold the plate chest height. As we lower and we break at the ankle, knees, and hips, we push the plate out in front. We make sure the hips come down lower than the knees, and we hold that position for 3 seconds. And as we raise, we pull the plate straight in. And what that does is it ensures my torso is in that really good vertical position that when I do come to do the proper squat, the load is sitting directly under the hips. Now from the side, which is very important, we have a nice straight torso. Push out in front, drop the hips lower than the knees. As we raise, pull the implement back in, reset, lower, hold, pull back in. And that hold at the bottom also creates massive amounts of mobility in the hip flexor and the lower back. Second squat regression is called the goblet squat. The goblet squat allows the athlete to use a bigger load than the CM squat, even though the technique is fairly similar. For the goblet squat, you can use a kettlebell, a dumbbell, or a sandbag. What you do is you hold the dumbbell in against the body. You secure the lower end of the dumbbell with the elbows and really squeeze it tight. Feet shoulder width apart, big breath in, brace, lower, bringing the hips lower than the knees. Elbows then come inside the knees and you slightly pry. And then as you raise, you push up and then hold. Now if you watch my technique from the side, we're trying to really maintain that straight torso as we lower. Get really good depth, getting the hips lower than the knees. Come up, and then one more time. Drop into the hole, push the knees out slightly, and push back to the starting position. Remember tucking the elbows in all the time to secure the dumbbell, and breathing when we lower and we raise. The third regression in the squat sequence on this online course is called a barbell bench or barbell box squat. And basically what it entails is the athlete is squatting to the height of the bench or the box that they're using. Doing the barbell bench squat allows the athlete to put quite a good load on, and it's quite a safe exercise. So we set up with the barbell up on the meaty part of the shoulders, bench directly behind us, and as we break at the ankle, knees, and hips, we reach for the bench, touch, and drive up. So as we're flexing at the ankle, knees, and hips as we lower, we touch, and then we triple extend, which allows us to get a lot of load through the quads and the hip flexors and the calves. We're going to do a dumbbell bench squat. Like the goblet squat, we hold the kettlebell up against the chest. We have a bench directly in behind us. And what we do is we break at the ankle, knees, and hips. And we just reach for the bench with our backside, touch, and drive up. One of the big benefits of doing a dumbbell box squat is you can put on a far heavier load and get a really good adaptation through the quads and through the hips. The fourth regression on this online course is called the landmine squat. I love this exercise because it allows the athlete to get in a really good deep squat position. It encourages mobility. It's a very safe exercise, and all you need is just a bar. The setup is you butt the end of one end of the barbell into a corner, okay, so it's secure. We then grab the barbell at the other end, grabbing the barbell with two hands. We make sure the barbell is sitting just roughly under the chin and above the breastbone, and we're slightly leaning forward into the barbell. Our feet are pointed forward and they're hip width apart. Our elbows are tucked in to our rib cage, securing the barbell nice and tight, and then we brace the core, so we've got a nice tight core. To start the exercise, we break at the ankle, knees, and hips, lowering the hips lower than the knees, and then we come out at the hole. If you don't feel comfortable, you can readjust as you go along. I need to go back a bit further. Break at the ankle, knees, and hips. Elbows come down inside the knees, and I push up. As I'm lowering, I'm controlling the bar. I'm getting a really good range, which is helping my mobility at the same time. And then I'm pushing up and getting strength development. That is the 4 regressions for the squat. Those are my 4 go-tos before I allow any athlete to squat with a barbell or a barbell with load. In the past, when I worked at Manchester United, David De Gea had a real problem with his knee, and part of that problem was that he wasn't squatting correctly with the barbell. So we took him back, we went to the CM squat, the goblet squat, then onto a bench squat, and then landmine squat before he's allowed to lift heavy with a barbell. The beauty of doing regressions are not only do they create the correct movement pattern for the squat, they also enhance mobility, they also improve flexibility, and it gives the athlete confidence that when they do go to the part when they squat heavy, that they've done all the foundation work for the squat. On the next stage of this online course, we're going to look at the 3 main squatting options: back squat, front squat, and overhead squat. All 3 squats offer a different adaptation. When we back squat, it focuses mainly on the hamstring and the lower back. When we move on to the front squat, that's more what we call anterior loaded. It's more the core and the quads. And overhead squat is fantastic for mobility and overall body conditioning. And as a reminder, until your athlete has mastered the 4 regressions, it is not appropriate for them to move on to this stage of squatting. So once they've mastered the competency of all the regressions we've shown you and they're confident, then we can move on to the 3 squatting options. The conventional back squat, this exercise focuses mainly on the hamstrings and the lower back. So to start the lift, we get under the bar, we bend our ankle, knees, and hips, and we rest the bar on the fleshy part of the shoulders, just below the neck. And to unrack the bar safely, we use the ankle, knees, and hips to stand up and then walk forward. Before we commence the exercise, make sure our feet are pointed forward, our core is switched on and braced, and before we lower the bar, we take a deep breath in and we brace the core. Break at the ankle, knees, and hips, lower with the bar, get the hips lower than the knees, and while keeping the torso straight, push back to starting position. Breathe in, lower, and as we raise the bar, we exhale. And last time, breathe in, elbows pointed down, lower, and exhale. As we lower the bar, we want the hips coming lower than the knees, torso nice and straight, chest up. Head pointed forward, eyes looking forward, lower, raise and hold. Squat option number 2, front squat. With the conventional front squat, unlike the last exercise, which was a back squat, which looked at hamstring, glutes and lower back, the conventional front squat focuses mainly on the quads and the anterior core, the front of your core. The bar sits up on the shoulders, and that acts as like a shelf or a platform for the bar to sit comfortably. So to begin the exercise, put your hands around the outside of the bar, rest the bar on the front of your shoulders, bend at the ankle, knees and hips, and then to unrack the bar, straighten the legs and walk forward. The bar sitting up on the shoulders, my elbows are pointed forward, I brace the core, I break at my ankle, knees and hips, and I lower the bar so that my hips are going lower than my knees, and to come out of that position, I punch my elbows up and push my hips forward. So brace my core, breathe in and brace, lower, and as I raise, exhale. Breathe in and brace, lower, and on the raise, exhale. Again, breathe in and raise. One of the issues with the front squat that I've found in the past is a lot of athletes don't have the mobility to hold the bar up on the shoulders. When I worked with the Irish rugby team, because rugby players are so strong and muscular, they didn't have the mobility in their lats and their triceps to be able to hold that bar up on the shoulders. So that's an aspect that you need to look at when you prescribe this exercise, but a great exercise for creating a lot of tension in the core and the quads. Third squat option, overhead squat. The overhead squat is a fantastic exercise for overall body mobility, strength and power. I've used this a lot in the past with my Olympic swimmers because it really pertains to what they do in the pool with shoulder mobility, strength. To do the overhead squat, we take the bar off the rack, we walk out. First point of call is to say that the overhead squat is quite an advanced exercise and you need a lot of mobility and strength in the upper body region to do this. And only select this exercise if it's appropriate to your athlete. We make sure the bar is directly over the crown of the head, so it's not too far forward, not too far back. We then almost pull the bar apart with our hands, and this sets the shoulder blades of the scapula in a really good strong position. Feet shoulder width apart as always. Take a deep breath in and really brace the core. Once we brace the core, we lower. Hips lower than the knees, and then press out of the hole. Pull the bar apart, breathe in, and then we lower the bar. Hips go lower than the knees, and then we raise up. Pull the bar apart, breathe in and brace. And then to return the bar, we bring it back to the rack and set it back. The next part of the online course is going to look at squat progressions. Under no circumstances should your athlete move on to the squat progressions until they've really mastered the front squat, back squat and overhead squat. What the squat progressions do is it allows your athletes to put on really, really big loads and be effective in handling the squat movement under more duress and more tension. The first squat progression we're going to look at on this online course is called the drop set or strip set. It involves the athlete doing a certain number of reps with a load, taking some weight off, doing some more reps with a slightly lighter load, taking the weight off, and then doing a third rep range with a lighter load. What this does is it allows the athlete to fail 3 times with 3 different loads, which really enhances the muscle adaptation and gives them massive strength and power gains. The normal rep range for a drop set is either 6-6-6 or 8-8-8 at 3 different loads. How you work out the load, your first set should be nearly to failure. Your second set, once you take some weight off, again, you fail a second time. And then equally on the third set, you'll fail again. So you're getting 3 fails in one set, which really enhances the strength and power adaptation of that exercise. So for me, I'm going to go 17.5, 15, and 10K on the bar. So I unrack the bar. I'm going to do 6 reps at 17.5. And normally you'll do this with a partner who might strip the bar for you. Very quickly take the weight off, which lowers the load, but now you're working in a state of fatigue. I do 6 more reps. The muscle doesn't know what's on the bar, but what the muscle does know is I'm tired and he's still making me work. So we go into the final strip set where the load becomes lighter again, and we do our final 6 reps. Now the drop set or the squat strip set is a highly advanced squat exercise. So it's only appropriate for your athlete once they've mastered the skill of the front squat, the back squat, and the overhead squat. And also they have a high training age, so they've been in the gym for quite a long period of time, they're competent at all the lifts, and they're very strong. I'm now going to demonstrate the squat time under tension exercise. The theory behind time under tension, in order for a muscle to get stronger, to grow and get that adaptation, it has to be under tension for at least 45 seconds or more. So what we do here is we work out the rep range, but also the length of time that we lift the bar. So for example, if I lift the bar off the rack and I lower it for 5 seconds and I raise it for 1 second, that gives me a total time of 6 seconds. If I do 8 reps of that at 6 seconds, it gives me a total time of 48 seconds, which is just around the minimum time I need to lift that bar to get adaptation. So I'm actually manipulating the lowering and the raising of the bar. So in order to get that 45 plus seconds, I need to manipulate the time that I lower the bar and raise it, and also the sets and reps. So I'm going to lower the bar for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for a second, raise for a second, and that will give me 7 seconds. Lower, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for a second, up for a second. And if I do that for 8 reps, that will give me a combined time of 56 seconds, which is well within the parameters of time under tension. To summarize time under tension, we need to manipulate the reps and the time of the lifting of the bar. So remember, we need to have the muscle under tension for at least 45 seconds plus. So if the time it takes to do 1 rep is 5 second lower, 1 second hold, and 1 second raise, that's 7 seconds. We need to do at least 7 or 8 reps to get above the 45 second parameters to get that muscle under tension and get that really good adaptation we're looking for. We've looked at the squat progressions, which is a drop or strip set, and also the time under tension. Under no circumstances should your athlete endeavor to do these lifts until they've got very, very strong in the front, back, and overhead squat. If your athlete does move on and do the progressions, what's the next step? Where do they go to next after this? Well, what I've used in the past is I put chains on the bar and do chain squats, or even rubber bands, which again is the next level up in squat development.